In the 17th century, people from Europe began settling in North America. These settlers came from various countries, including England, France, Spain, and the Netherlands, each bringing their own customs, traditions, and hopes for a new life. They created 13 colonies along the Atlantic coast. These colonies stretched from what is now Maine in the north to Georgia in the south, each with its own unique characteristics and challenges. These colonies were part of Great Britain, ruled by the king and parliament. The British government saw the colonies as a source of raw materials and a market for British goods, imposing various laws and taxes to control colonial trade and production. Life in the colonies was hard, but people worked hard and built communities. They faced harsh weather, disease, and conflicts with Native American tribes, yet they persevered, establishing towns, schools, and churches. They farmed the land, traded goods, and created their own governments. Agriculture was the backbone of the colonial economy, with crops like tobacco, rice, and indigo being particularly important. Trade with Native Americans and other colonies also played a crucial role in their survival and prosperity. Over time, the colonists developed a strong sense of identity. They began to see themselves not just as British subjects, but as members of a distinct society with its own values and way of life. They saw themselves as Americans, different from those living in Britain. This emerging American identity was shaped by their experiences in the New World, including the challenges they faced and the freedoms they enjoyed. The colonists valued their freedoms. They cherished their ability to worship freely, own property, and participate in local governance, which were rights they felt were increasingly threatened by British policies. They elected representatives to make local decisions. They believed in self-government. Town meetings and colonial assemblies became important venues for discussing and deciding on local issues, reflecting the colonists' commitment to democratic principles. For many years, the relationship between the colonies and Britain was peaceful. Trade flourished, and many colonists felt a sense of loyalty to the British Crown, enjoying the protection and benefits of being part of the British Empire. But this peace would not last. Tensions grew over time. Disputes over taxation, representation, and British interference in colonial affairs led to increasing unrest and resistance among the colonists. The colonists wanted more freedom. They resented the British government's attempts to control their economic and political life, and they began to demand greater autonomy and respect for their rights. They wanted a say in how they were governed. This desire for self-determination and democratic governance would eventually lead to the American Revolution, as the colonists fought to establish a nation based on the principles of liberty and justice for all. After years of relative peace, the American colonies thrived under a sense of autonomy and self-governance. However, trouble began brewing between Britain and the colonies, disrupting this tranquility. The British government had spent a significant amount of money fighting the French and Indian War, which left them in substantial debt. To recover these costs, they imposed a series of new taxes on the colonists, hoping to alleviate their financial burden. One of the first major taxes was the Stamp Act, which taxed legal documents, newspapers, and other printed materials, causing widespread discontent. Following this, the Townshend Acts were introduced, taxing goods imported from Britain such as tea, glass, and paper. The colonists saw these taxes as deeply unfair and an overreach of British authority. They argued vehemently that they had no representation in the British Parliament, and thus, no say in the laws that affected them. No taxation without representation became their rallying cry, a powerful slogan that united the colonies in their cause. The colonists resisted these taxes in various ways, showing their defiance and determination. They boycotted British goods, refusing to buy items that were taxed, which hurt British merchants and pressured the government. They organized protests and demonstrations, gathering in public spaces to voice their grievances and demand change. They wrote letters and pamphlets, spreading their ideas and arguments for their rights and freedoms far and wide. In response, the British government sent troops to the colonies, hoping to quell the growing unrest and enforce their laws. Tensions escalated, leading to a series of confrontations that would eventually spark a pivotal moment in history, the American Revolution. In April 1775, British troops marched towards Concord, Massachusetts. They aimed to seize colonial weapons and arrest rebel leaders. However, colonial militiamen, known as Minutemen, were ready. At Lexington Green, the first shots of the American Revolution were fired. The British encountered fierce resistance from the Minutemen. Though outnumbered, the colonists fought bravely. The British retreated to Boston, pursued by colonial militia. The battles of Lexington and Concord marked the beginning of the Revolutionary War. News of the fighting spread quickly throughout the colonies. The colonists realized they were now at war with Great Britain. In 1776, a group of colonial leaders gathered in Philadelphia. They formed the Continental Congress to guide the colonies through the war. Thomas Jefferson, a brilliant writer and thinker, drafted the Declaration of Independence. This document declared that the colonies were now free and independent states. It stated that all men are created equal and have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. On July 4, 1776, the Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence. This act was a bold statement to the world. It marked the birth of a new nation founded on the ideals of freedom and self-government. The Declaration inspired colonists to fight for their independence. Section 5. Leading the charge. Washington and the Continental Army. Leading the fight for independence was George Washington. A respected Virginian planter and soldier, Washington was appointed commander-in-chief of the Continental Army. He faced the daunting task of building an army from scratch. The Continental Army was made up of volunteers from all walks of life. They were farmers, shopkeepers, and artisans who left their homes to fight for freedom. Washington was a strategic thinker and a natural leader. He instilled discipline and determination in his troops. He understood that the fight for independence would be long and difficult, but his leadership inspired the Continental Army to persevere through hardship and defeat. Section 6. Winning hearts and minds. The importance of Saratoga. The Battle of Saratoga, fought in 1777, was a turning point in the war. The Continental Army, led by General Horatio Gates, surrounded and defeated British General John Burgoyne's forces. The victory at Saratoga had a profound impact. It showed the world that the Americans could defeat the mighty British Army. The victory boosted American morale and convinced France to join the war on the side of the colonists. France provided crucial military and financial aid to the Americans. Spain and the Netherlands also joined the war against Britain, further tipping the scales in favor of the colonists. Section 7. A world turned upside down. Global impact of the Revolution. The American Revolution had a global impact, inspiring revolutions and reforms in other countries. The ideals of liberty, equality, and self-government resonated far beyond the shores of North America. In France, the American Revolution influenced the French Revolution of 1789. The French people, inspired by the American example, rose up against their own monarchy. The American Revolution also influenced movements for independence in Latin America. Simon Bolivar, a Venezuelan revolutionary leader, admired George Washington and the American struggle for freedom. He led revolutions against Spanish rule in South America, drawing inspiration from the American experience. Section 8. The Price of Freedom. Challenges of a New Nation. The victory at Yorktown in 1781 effectively ended the fighting in the American Revolution. The Treaty of Paris, signed in 1783, formally recognized American independence. The newly formed United States faced numerous challenges. The nation was deeply in debt from the war. The states were divided on many issues, lacking a strong central government. The Articles of Confederation, the first attempt at a national government, proved ineffective. The Founding Fathers recognized the need for a stronger union. In 1787, they convened the Constitutional Convention to address these challenges and create a more perfect union. Section 9. A Legacy of Liberty. The Enduring Impact of the Revolution. The American Revolution was a pivotal moment in world history. It was not just a war for independence but a profound statement of human rights and the potential for self-governance. The struggle and sacrifices made by the revolutionaries set a precedent for future generations. It marked the birth of a new nation founded on the principles of liberty, equality, and self-government. The Declaration of Independence, a document of immense historical significance, articulated the colonies' desire to break free from British rule and laid the groundwork for a society where all men are created equal. The legacy of the American Revolution continues to shape the United States and the world today. The ideals of freedom and democracy that emerged from this period have influenced countless movements and governments. The American flag, a symbol of these enduring values, waves proudly as a reminder of the nation's origins. The The Constitution, drafted in 1787, established a system of government based on the separation of powers, checks and balances, and individual rights. This framework has provided stability and adaptability, allowing the United States to grow and evolve while maintaining its core principles. The Bill of Rights, added to the Constitution in 1791, guarantees fundamental freedoms such as freedom of speech, religion, and the press. These first 10 amendments ensure that individual liberties are protected against government overreach, forming the bedrock of American civil rights. The American Revolution inspired generations of reformers and revolutionaries around the world who sought to create a more just and equitable society. The French Revolution, for instance, drew heavily from the American experience, as did numerous other movements that aimed to challenge tyranny and promote democratic ideals. The ideals of the American Revolution continue to serve as a beacon of hope for people seeking freedom and self-determination. Modern-day protests and movements for democracy and human rights often invoke the spirit of the American Revolution, demonstrating its lasting influence on the global quest for liberty and justice.